Welcome to the Theater of Others podcast. My name is Adam Marple, and I'm the co-artistic director of the Theater of Others. With the COVID-19 pandemic forcing a shutdown and reevaluation of space and gathering, we at the Theater of Others are thinking about what stories we need and how best we can share them. We believe space is psychology, and it informs the way in which an audience interacts and reacts to what is presented to them. We create uniquely theatrical events in bespoke sensory performance spaces crafted to encourage curiosity and grant the audience permission to commune with the play. Now that space has moved online, how can we encourage interaction and action amongst an audience virtually? The Theater of Others produces plays that both welcome and challenge the audience. We are committed to international collaboration and are a laboratory that helps artists grow through intensive study of their craft. The Theater of Others creates a shared community of artists and audiences for the purpose of exploring the most profound issues of our lives and times. We believe the play watches the audience. The audience is necessary, and they are witness to what happens. And you get to be witness to us making that happen. The purpose of this podcast is to open up our process and let you in. We're peeling back the curtain, so to speak, and encouraging you to follow along, to ponder, prod, and question, to join us and criticize us if need be. Being a witness is no passive task, and it requires much from you. Are you up for the journey? On the podcast today from Melbourne, Australia, are co-artistic directors Budi Miller and myself in Cairo, Egypt. This podcast contains explicit language.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Budi.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am voluptuous.
Cool. I don't know what that means.
Voluptuous is a combination between feeling lumpy, juicy, free, and fun.
Uh-huh.
Voluptuous, meaning my boobs are like just hiked and perked at the right spot. Voluptuous.
Voluptuous. Beautiful.
Voluptuous. Voluptuous.
Yeah. You're trying to be that guy. You're trying to be that guy on Instagram, aren't you? The word of the day is voluptuous. Voluptuous. Yeah.
Booty walks down the day. Walks down the day? I don't even speak
Booty can't.
English.
Booty can't speak English.
But
Exactly.
he is definitely voluptuous.
Yes. That is often what I think of you.
That's voluptuous.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when I used to live in Brooklyn, and you know how I dress.
I do. I'm aware of how you dress. I've seen
You know how I dress. And you know how I used to dress when I used to have that
You did have a badunkadunk.
Yeah, thank you. Can you please translate that for our listeners who may not know what a badunkadunk is, or a badunkadunk?
Badunkadunk is junk in the trunk.
Now, there are some cultures that don't have trunk; they have a boot.
Loot in the the boot. That's what it is. Yes.
In the trunk, loot in the boot, and junk in the trunk.
Yeah.
And what, pray tell, does that actually mean, Adam Marple?
Got a big ol' ass.
Big old juicy ass.
Juicy ass. Yeah, there you go. That's what you have.
Budi Miller steps out of his Brooklyn apartment and walks on the street, and a black woman sees his voluptuous badunkadunk.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That is the proper use of that word.
I just remember, so I walk out, and I'm feeling beautiful. You know, the Brooklyn walk. You know, you get out in the streets, and you got, can't nobody touch you. You are fine. Okay,
you're feeling it.
Booty is just for
pristine.
It's just huge and juicy. Weight tight, tiny, like 2 inches. I have a 2-inch waist and a 40-inch butt.
Oh wow. Wow.
And I'm not even wearing my corset. And so I walk out.
You're just an esophagus and an ass. That's all you are.
I'm just an esophagus and ass. And an ass. I walk out, just going minding my own, going to catch my G train so I can get to the city.
Yep.
And this black woman sees me when I walk past her, And she was like, damn. Ba-dong, ba-dong, bong, bong. And I was like, and then I looked at her and she was like, whoop. I said, yeah, girl, I know. It look good on it. It look good on it. It's good, right? It's good. She's like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've never had a black woman say that about my ass, that's for sure.
You don't have an ass. You have a
I
concave.
have I have a yeah.
You have
I have a
negative space.
I have a nega ass is what I have. It's yeah.
Yes, you have a nega ass.
Yeah.
You have a nagut.
Yeah.
The word of the
It's
day
just
is nagut.
yeah.
A gut. Nagut. No, that's like what is it? What was it? Sesame Street? N gut. Nagut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Those little squid, those little n gut gut gut.
or
Yeah.
or was it what um was it um uh what was it? Mum and Shans? B oh ball. N
Oh God,
gut.
we are so old.
Nugget.
We are so old right now. I'm not even gonna be able to find this on YouTube. This is how old this is, Booty. I can't put this in the show notes.
Ah, Mum and Shants. Wait, Mum and Shants, H&R Puffin stuff.
Mm-hmm. Captain Kangaroo.
Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah.
Romper Room.
Romper Room.
Romper Stomper. Romper
Bumper
Do.
Bump.
I
Yeah.
see Adam. I don't see you. Cause you got a black
Yeah.
name. Mr.
Old.
Rogers.
Old. Old. Yeah.
I got one for you.
Okay.
Winnie the Pooh.
Still around. So yeah, I think everybody will understand that one.
Yes, yes. Everyone will understand that one. But we are finally complete.
Okay.
You are Eeyore.
Yes.
I'm
Accepted.
Tigger, what you call me.
The bouncy tiger.
The Bouncy Tiger.
Yeah.
Galtney is Piglet.
Yes.
Jack is Christopher Robin.
Yes.
And ladies and gentlemen, non-binary conforming individuals, we have a very special guest today. The Theater of Others would like to introduce you to our Winnie the Pooh. For those of you who do not know the tale Winnie the Pooh, you may know this incredible artist. His name is Eugene Ma. And baby, you ain't seen nothing yet. Miss Ma is here. Eugene Ma is an old queen and a dear friend. And a member of the family. And I was just in Toronto teaching for him at the Performance Atelier. His studio in Toronto, Eugene Ma is an accolade of Christopher Bay's. He is cut from the cloth of many moons, many Asian Chinese moons. He is a souvent. He's an expert pianist. He's an incredible clown, an incredible director. He can get 70 actors from Hong Kong to London, all paid and getting paid. Can you believe it? He could travel actors around the world, pay them, get paid himself, and get a 5-star what review? 5-star, 5-star, five what? 5-star.
Tell us your secrets, for God's sake, please.
He has been on many committees for new writing. He is a proponent for Asian forward uh, curriculum, and not only curriculum but pedagogies that actually center around looking at the intersection from him as a third, what is that, third generation, not third generation, third
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 culture.
th- he speaks He
Uh-oh.
speaks.
Hello, everybody.
He speaks.
How's it going?
What is third culture, Eugene Ma? What is third culture?
Third culture. It's just someone who bounces between cultures a lot, right? We fly around a lot nowadays. We see people from all these, all these countries. Yeah, I don't work in one country. I work in multiple. So yeah, it's just a bouncer. It's another name for a bouncer.
Hey, we see. So our Winnie the Pooh, our bouncer, Eugene Ma. Ladies and gentlemen, non-binary conforming individuals, please put your hands together for my dear, dear friend, my sister from a different mister, Eugene Ma.
Yay! Hi,
Yay!
Budi. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Eugene. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
So, what are we going to talk about?
I don't know. You tell me. I do a bunch of things. So I teach, I direct, I travel, I eat. Which do you want to chat about first?
Those
I
all sound
think we should.
amazing.
I think we should actually talk about all those things. But the biggest thing is I want to talk about is what the heck are you doing in Toronto?
Toronto. It's kind of a whole trek that got me here, right? I was born here, but since 3 months old, when I was shipped back to Hong Kong
Shipped
for my
in a
growing
box?
up,
Was it DHL?
in a box,
Was it
in a metal
DHL or was it
tube
American Express?
somehow.
Yeah, right.
UPS.
FedEx.
Predates that.
UPS. You were shipped UPS.
The dynastic pigeon of sorts. That's my mythology anyway that I create. I grew up in Hong Kong till I was 15, and then I went to high school in Toronto for 3 years. Uh, right after that, I went to NYU, and then I kind of stayed in America for most of my career. And when pandemic time came, I went back to Hong Kong when North America was kind of shut down. So end of pandemic, right when it became an endemic, I had to make a decision. Do I want to go back to freelancing and teaching all around these schools in America, or do I want to start something in Canada, seeing
Crazy
that
bitch.
there may be
So crazy.
art funding, and then also from my freelance life I could also kind of scrap together just enough to open a little studio, and then I chose the latter, so I came back to my birthplace.
So crazy. I love you.
Kind of out of context. Yeah. So here I am. I started this thing called the Performance Atelier, which is also funny because all my stories are really long-winded. That's just me and ADHD's relationship. And I was mainly here for a theater company, but I slowly learned about the funding structure, and that for developmental grants, it's not as hard, but to get to production level, it actually takes like decades. I mean, I may be exaggerating.
It does,
they
though,
want
'cause
like
it's,
4 or 5 smaller grants for you to actually get to the big ones.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they get a production grant that they can't even afford for set sometimes, is what I'm hearing from the zeitgeist. Not sure. So I'm like, you know what? I'm having a moment with institutions, right? I started getting a little more critical with my freelance teaching career. We'll go into that in a second. Yeah, because I was a young Asian people pleasing human.
You're no longer
I didn't know
Asian?
that about myself. I am Asian. I'm slightly less people pleasing. I'm still people loving.
Yeah, good boy.
That's what I identify as.
That's what you identify. Is that your intersection?
People lover. We're lovers of humanities. That's why we deal with actors. They're crazy and amazing and astonishing, but messed up, and messed up. Right? It's part of it. It's what makes it rich. And then I start to look at training structures, and since pandemic, I had been working with more undergraduate programs, and I just saw so many ways of curriculum building. Not really serving habit building for actors, right? When we want muscle memories built, when we want, all these things, and then they get 3 hours out of context once a week sometimes for these very core classes. And I felt pooped, It felt like pushing uphill at a very high level, and then it almost regresses beyond where we started on the hill sometimes the next week. And so I started to want to build a structure that supports the kind of habit building and how I begin to contextualize acting. I don't do anything different than what was taught to me, but I contextualize it a little different. That we'll talk about in a second.
Well, I feel like that's what we have had to do, Eugene.
Yeah.
As Black and Brown kids, is contextualizing, because it was so steeped in imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, right? That we've had to contextualize, and it's one of those things of like, you as a souvent ADHD wizard, and me as a wild dyslexic maverick, we've had to be experts in all those different realms in order to actually see where it lands inside of our bodies. And because of that, we have a very clear way of articulating it to the masses of what the work is actually doing and the essential things that are happening inside the work. And what I would love to you to share with the world on our podcast, because I just love your point of view about what you have a really uh, strong opinion about the intensive. Can you talk about the intensive?
I do. So we are so fortunate to have so many angels behind this kind of utopian dream of mine almost. After I started this studio, I'm like, okay, I at first I wanted to build a 1-year program, but of course from scratch, in a new country, it's just very, very difficult to do that. Also, in a country that almost lacks a training culture, right? It's very big. Um, uh, in habit for people to look for an agent and a headshot and just want to go auditioning. And the classes they are looking for are like self-taping classes. It's kind of wild, right? No one would just show up to Toronto Symphony and say, I want to be a pianist tomorrow. Right. But for actors, right, that's the age old, all acting teachers say, right? Like no pianist would not practice their piano, and no singers would not go to class. Same for ballet dancers, right? They have morning class. Where's the morning class for actors? So yeah, so I built this kind of 5-week utopian version of what I wish I had that is almost at the intensity of like a second semester grad school vibe, where we work intensively in kind of all areas. And Budi and I both came from a strange, wild background of, the realms of ETW adjacent training, experimental theater wing of New York University undergraduate drama. And so that level of embodiment, right? I mean, that I'm sure it has something to do with the roots of your chasing taksu as an idea. And I'm sure people who listen to this podcast would know that work a little bit from Budi. So I also come from a little bit of that curiosity of the really embodied, the fully realized, the fully free body as engine and appetite of where the actor stems from, because that's the mother of all impulses. And we stick an actor on screen and just say, like, you need to be more impulsive. Like, good luck. It's not going to happen. We all know that. But when we pave the grounds, right, do some presence work, do some mask work, do some clown work, do some commedia work, embodiment, transformation, which we have different vocabularies for, Budi and I, but I think we're on the same page about all those things, will happen. And then we can also adjust for scale, because we're building awareness and different ways of listening and bouncing, so that you're not even making brain decisions to scale. Your radar is just so on that you bounce naturally between mediums. And I think that's possible in decent training.
What I love is because, and it's not like you just like randomly go, oh wow, this would be really cool. You have taught at what was called Yale School of Drama, but now the David Geffen School of the School of Drama, and Juilliard, and Columbia, and we're entrenched in the faculty and in the selection process, and really understand what the top tier actor is doing and what kind of curriculum they've been getting. So that's one of the things that you and I've had that, that privilege of being kind of like on the fringe looking in, going, oh, so that's how you do it. Oh, so that's how you did it. Oh, that actor over there. Because I had my Chautauqua world as well. So I had all of them as well.
Yeah.
So I was like sitting there and going, oh, so that's what the NYU is. Okay, so that's what it's okay. And with that, the gift that we've been able to receive from that is we've been able to really condense it like a bouillon of what they really need to know and learn, and how long it takes to do it, and what needs to be repeated, and how and the amount of time that it needs to happen. You're an intensive master, and I'm Mr. Retreat boy. You do it through, you've done it through intensive, I've done it through retreats, and it's all the both, we're speaking to the same brief.
Yeah. But my blood is Asian. I like the feeling of work. So intensive. Feels closer to my heart. We come here to sweat, and then we get to work. Which is unfortunately very capitalistic over multiple generations of my blood. And we're trying to deprogram that. But at the same time, it's very familiar for my body at this moment. So yeah, totally. Yes, and yes, and yes. And also for my brain, right? A retreat, I want to kind of hang out more and, chill out a little more. So maybe there will be retreats built in for later on, right? That are more like rejuvenation. But I also want to encourage actors, especially as I learn to work more with Gen Zers, which by now I'm not the latest generation anymore in training, which is insane because I started my career teaching grad school, and I had my undergrad. I had an undergrad classmate from my class in my first graduate class as a teacher. Yeah. So that's my relationship. So the fact that they are a different generation is bizarre to me when I come back to undergrads now. But it's for them to almost have a work ethic that's no longer, because now work seems very fluid in the world because everything's online, right? It's not a real thing that you work so hard and then you kind of almost earn a level of skill and prowess that warrants their eyeballs because they want to watch us, because they get something from us. It's almost like, I'm talented. You should look at me, which seems to be the trend with the illusion we get from the apps we get. So it's almost like we also want to earn the retreats, but at first we want to give them, I think there's a foundational level of craft, of listening, of embodiment, of engagement that you first get. And then we want to do something that, okay, now we want to loosen them. Because when you loosen them, you get way more colors and more interesting things. But before that, learn to tap into that muscle, which strangely comes from me, because as ADHD can't focus, that also wasn't my way of learning. But, I have my hyper focus. And when I work, I'm kind of in my hyper focus mode.
Yeah, but you're also a prodigy.
Other people call it flow.
You're a prodigy child. You're a prodigy pianist. It's like what it's like to do hard work and to be at the top of your game as an artist, both as a musician and as an actor, and as a director, and as a dramaturg. And it's like it's and this is kind of the direction I wanted to go into, because Adam and I talk about this all the time. It's like this generational kind of malaise that has come up, because it's like, don't you like what made you think that this isn't hard work? Why do you think it's because it's so easily accessible to them? They don't we didn't have access, so we had to work our asses off to figure out how to get access. You know what I mean? How to get into a room, how to be at a table.
Yeah, I mean, my dream started from so far away. I sounded like I was born in Canada, which is true. The ideation of this dream, right? I lived on a street called Broadway in Hong Kong. You can't make this shit up. 102 Broadway, 18th floor. We're no longer there.
If they go looking for you,
we're still on Broadway. It's 90-something Broadway now, but right. So for me, it's this very distant idea, this Shangri-La, this utopian idea of Broadway. And then I would buy like these terrible Andrew Lloyd Webber DVDs of these broads like belting, you know, and I'll pop them in and then like get my bath ready. Oh God, TMI.
Come on, no, it's not. You know I'm a bath girl. Come on, it's all about the bath.
So you know, the fact that now a lot of my classmates and colleagues are deeply entrenched in that world is bizarre to me, right? And then since going to NYU, being in touch with all these people who are at the top, right, of the game, because we had access.
Your year was the year of like everybody's working.
My couple years are crazy. Names are not coming right now because this is the fourth week of intensive, and I cannot do any names at the moment. But yeah, we'll
doesn't matter. They're not on the podcast. They don't matter. Yeah. They don't exist, Eugene.
Yeah, I'm also not a name dropper, of which there are many.
Girl, you are a name dropper, just not publicly.
Not publicly. Yeah, I get public pee shy with names. So yeah. So the fact that, you know, I had so many points of access is bizarre. As you mentioned, I also don't think anyone will have the level of access I did, which is why I was able to start teaching at a fairly high level, as people consider, at a young age, because I finished college. And then at that time, your other podcast guest, my mentor, dear Christopher Bass of Yale and Juilliard,
yes.
Our mentor, I asked him if I could apprentice with him, and he was like, you're really young, and he was kind of like half dodging, but of course I used my musical skills to lure him a little bit.
And then he can play the piano, and so Chris loves to have someone accompany, you know, his work, you know, and so
yeah, because in the clown work, right, a lot of opening actors up is through the tool of music that really gets people breathing to support their singing in sharing, because it's just more vulnerable. It requires more breath support and more physical support. And I like to make things up because I'm lazy to actually write and compose something. So I'm really good at making things up as people are figuring it out, but get the exact right tone. Very simple stuff, but
cool,
it's
y'all.
the right touch.
I've witnessed it. So Eugene and I, we found our clowns together. Eugene and I, we trained together. And so I got to watch his clown evolve with the piano, and it was magic.
Thank you. And I also saw your clown, Afraid of Heights, and that was a sight to behold. A giant, a very well-built Black man on a tiny table that I thought would break in a big hall in Brooklyn. That was something.
Yeah, baby. You know how we do.
Yeah.
You know how we do.
Yeah. And but back to my privilege of access. I was like, what, 21, 22? Oh, it actually goes back. ADHD jumps. Get used to it for this episode.
Bring it, baby. Bring it.
Right before my sophomore year, Chris called me in for the original production of Servant of Two Masters at Yale Rep, before it went around the country. And I had just taken like maybe 2 workshops with him. And then I got to the last callback. And of course, all my hopes and dreams were in that bucket and stuff. But I was an international student, so it wasn't meant to be. But when I graduated, somehow the Forces of Universes were operating. That show was still running. And I was, I think, in 3 or 4 contracts in a row with Chris right when I graduated. So I did... Accidental Death of an Anarchist at Berkeley Rep and somewhere else, and Yale Rep. And then by that time, Servant of Two Masters, that production I auditioned for 2-3 years ago, finally went to Seattle Rep. And so that was the beginning of my career, was as an actor for Chris. And then during that same time, I also forced my way into being his teaching apprentice because I played piano. And then he would call me when I missed class or when I'm late. And I was also really late because ADHD people dealt with those. I'm much better at it now. But
he doesn't do colonial time, Adam Marple.
Yeah, when I teach at my studio, we don't. Scene study goes forever. but it's amazing, and everyone has a breakthrough.
Because you're on human time, not colonial time.
Yeah, but I also need to respect human times because they have colonial lives outside of the studio. Oh, by
Ouch!
the way,
Ooh.
with my show in London, it was so interesting. I got to meet my colonizer. I met
that's
the
right.
prince.
Tell 'em
The
about that.
prince
Tell 'em
came
about
to
that.
my show, Adam. That was crazy.
God.
Prince Edward came to my show. Story for another day.
No, today. Story for today. Tell us about it.
No, but back to that's
No, wait.
so
you. Oh no, we want to know about the prince first.
Okay.
Because it's all
He
about
was
your
lovely.
privilege anyway. So tell us about you. Tell us about meeting your colonizer.
Sure. More access privilege for y'all. Okay, so as this like random underdog Asian director there in London, I wasn't particularly invited to the top floor to the prince's reception, even though he came to my show. And my dear Hong Kong British choreographer, dear friend of mine, Mandy, I asked her like, "Do you know where the prince went? The lights came out and he disappeared already." And then we poked around and they're like, "He's upstairs." And like, I'm the director. Everyone knows who I am in this building. I'll just show up. So I went up and had wine with the prince. That was
and
random.
got a photo.
And I got a photo. I'll send it to you.
So it happened. You know what happened because you have a
So
photo.
it happened. It actually happened.
It was real.
Yeah. Anyway,
It was real. Yeah.
but back to my
That's
other
real.
privileges, of which of which I fought for many.
Yes.
Very hard as an ESL kid at NYU, right?
ESL
Where
meaning
it began.
English as a second language.
Yeah, because Cantonese is my mother tongue. In those shows with Chris, and then I started doing my apprenticeship in Clown and Commedia with Chris, and started accompanying and also composing music. And also the curriculum kind of evolved a little bit during that time, because when the music got a little more substantial in the work, the actors went further in the song exercises. So some other muscles we usually work in other exercises started to show up in those exercises. So it was kind of this amazing synergy that I was also like, oh my God, it's so exciting. I loved being there. And I was also kind of super young. I was 21, 22, a bouncy little ball, even wider than now, if you can imagine. I would just ask, like, can I go to other classes? So like, I think I may be the only person in the history of these institutions to just show up to random classes. And sometimes I even go up. I remember going up for Vicky Chagoyen's singing class at Yale. Like, I didn't have to apply. I don't think I would have gotten in. I didn't have to do homework and I didn't have to pay. And I got to just show up to random classes and steal from the best teachers of the generation.
Amen.
And that was kind of miraculous, and I'm still very, very thankful, right? It's the right time, right place, but also like I fight to be places, Budi, like we have to fight very, very hard because we don't naturally belong in those spaces.
And then you look young, and that's the other thing. It's like, and they treat you like you are unintelligent and don't have the the credentials to be able to do and espouse what you do.
Totally. And also for many years I bought into that, right? I also thought I wasn't intelligent because my talent was found to be in clown early in my performing and teaching career. And I really bought into that persona. I thought I was that bouncy thing. I thought it's a flat line kind of super openness because that's the superpower. But it's so visceral that I actually understand the inner workings, and I can work with people who don't actually have the same kind of native understanding of that world. And that also extended into text things. I actually have to talk about my other teacher, Rachel Chafkin, in directing too. My second year directing,
Adam, do you know
that's
Rachel?
when
I went to school with her. I know Rachel.
Were you the same year?
She was 2 years above me.
Cool. Yeah, because Rachel was actually still in school while she was teaching me. That was like the 1 year she actually taught. Because the year before, I think she was a TA, and then she blew up in the theater scene shortly thereafter. So it was Rachel because I would just show up. My impulses are usually right, but I usually could not root things out from the text because I would get so nervous because I was so keenly aware that it wasn't a language thing, but I felt like culturally disconnected to these American and British texts. I also only worked on British texts for some reason. I don't know why, but I only worked on in-your-face Royal Court texts, Sarah Kane, Mark Ravenhill,
Wow.
Strange at NYU. That's all I worked on in directing classes.
You know, I love me some Sarah Kane.
Yeah, me too. Still do. And I think Rachel, by the end of the class, was like, she told me she would photocopy my script analysis and give it to the class. And our section was not even the directing section, because that is so crazy. We fought for our education also, because at Playwrights second year, then we had to declare tracks. Do you want to be a performer or do you want to be a director? And then a bunch of us wanted to direct, and we also wanted the acting classes because you get more class time. I feel like it's better consumer decision. Terrible capitalistic mindsets. And then we would get Sunday Church of Directing with Rachel, and it became its own things. And Rachel said yes. So the performance track kids who really wanted directing that year would show up on Sunday for 4 hours. I think it was longer than the normal 3-hour class. Lou Reed would be doing Tai Chi next door. It was the strangest. And they stank. And the scenes were just much better because it's a special event. It's not one of 4 classes of the day. People didn't rush through and do it. Like, we had a full half day. We prep, we come in, and then Rachel and Libby, I think at the time, from the team, would just be there with us and really dive into the scenes and really take time. And it became this special event that I thought was, very, very special in my undergraduate education. And then she's the person who was like, no, you're not dumb. What you wrote actually, were very clearly from the lens of the characters. And you also know how to dive in. And they're all from the text. Like, what the hell? I thought it was just impulse. So yeah, that was the first instance that I even had an awareness of my intelligence as a theater maker or as a dramaturg or director. So that was profound for me. But I was also lucky.
This drive and hunger, though, that you're really tapping into, that you have to be successful at anything. And that's one of the things that I love so much about your students from Hong Kong who came, that's there right now for the summer intensive, that they have that same drive. Can you talk about them a little bit, because they're really special, and I want to highlight. There are younguns. There are younguns that actually do have this drive.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. So a bunch of my students from the Hong Kong Baptist University's new program. I think it's the first BFA program in the university system outside of the one conservatory there, in acting for the global screen. And they learn how to act in English in Hong Kong. And most of them are also English as second language. And they just have to be so fierce in encountering the work, right? They don't yet have the full architecture to support what they want yet, I don't think, from what they've been communicating with me. So part of this intensive also was for me to really reconnect with them and give them a fairly affordable option to train with
very affordable, not fairly, very affordable,
very, very affordable for what it is. It's kind of bizarre. I don't even know if we'll have the resources to redo this. I'm sure we will. I'm not manifesting otherwise. I know I will. But it's really bizarre. I'll talk about that in a second. So these kids, right? They're not the most privileged kids from Hong Kong because they attend a local university, on the government subsidies and everything. And they also have to work in their second language. And I was so fortunate with this class. I got to have them for, I think, 2 semesters. I taught them voice and speech, but secretly I just started teaching acting because I felt like they weren't getting enough of certain training or certain, at least in the American trained sense of craft
Sounds like
and
Budi
listening and
Miller and the
responding.
Saw
I
Colors of
was
the
going to
Earth.
say, I was going to say, it's like that's
Yeah.
pretty much the every single year with Budi and his voice and speech class. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really just acting 101 with a text and being active and having a target and all those things. And then I would also get to teach a carte blanche. We called it clown workshop for 2 weeks straight for like, I don't know. We do 7 hours a day. Like we do 70 hours over 2 weeks over a break. It's kind of bizarre. So I love these intensive things because as a student, I grew the most in Chris Base's summer intensives, right? That's when, and everyone books jobs, and then everyone's really good, and then class is almost better than when I pay 150 on Broadway. So that's the kind of magic and spell I want to capture, and the kinds of things I want to initiate. So I was able to find that, and also I just reframed because half of clown just became acting. So, we have to sneak things in, Budi.
We do, girl.
Yeah, I'm like, what basic skills do they need the most before I leave? It may not be.
This is how you
to be the
decolonize a
most
curriculum.
sparkling. Yeah, and I also just didn't get a job in Canada, but I told them like, yeah, what's your strategy in making the EDI thing work with the students? And I'm like, I'm just not going to follow curriculum. Whatever they need, I'll just follow that instead. I don't know if that's a factor.
I told you, your response should have been me being in the room there.
Well, nah. No, but for me, I'm just like, I'll tell you. And I also told them like, this may be the reason you don't hire me. And it's that's okay. You do you. Because we have an institution here that's growing.
Yeah, talk about so tell everyone exactly what this 5 weeks is. Take us through the whole design, the curriculum, like the teachers, the whole. I want people to see how amazing this curriculum this summer is, and what they've missed, and what they can actually have next year.
Totally. Ooh, it's what I dreamed as a 20-year-old. It's tasty. It's intense. It almost is modeled after the summer when I did Chris Bay's summer intensive, but I also did our dear friend Raina's Grotowski intensive a day. So for that 1 week, I got a cardiac arrhythmia from that week, but I did 6 hours of clown a day and then 4 hours of Grotowski straight through for a week, and I screwed my body up. But I like intensity. And excitement. But our first week, I wanted to open our bodies up a little bit. So we started with an amazing 8 days out of 10 days with Budi Miller, the dear, because I want them to be connected to their bodies. I wanted us to begin with Fitzmaurice work. That's not only vocal alignment, but like your full body engagement and freedom. Because, tremoring is decolonizing, right? Because we are not putting our bodies in these strange shapes and forms. And I think most of the curriculum, we try to do that until they have that freedom, and then they can put them into weird containers, which is what we're doing tomorrow, actually. So we started with Fitzmaurice, and also Budi's work that deals with the Taksu spirit, right? Conjuring this kind of meeting of the gods when the room is truly alive. The spirits are released through these masks, these archetypal masks that he brings in, that draws a little bit from Michael Chekhov, but really further refined by Budi. And I'm sure the fans of this podcast will know that work. So I'm not going to go deeply into that. So the first 8 days we had Budi, and then we had 2 days of more traditional text analysis before I dove into decolonize scene study with me, which means I just go on forever. So they had our dear friend Cole Lewis, who also went to Yale, and then was the most recent head of acting at Toronto Metropolitan University, where I also teach in their BFA program, which is one of the main BFA programs in Canada. And after that, on the Saturday, we welcomed in our friend Colleen Rush, a casting director in town, to do on-camera work with them. And then this past week, we had Raoul Wilk, who did Jazz in the Body. not jazz in terms of what you get in musical theater school. None of that. We do vernacular jazz. So yeah, we actually learn to, actually go to Harlem, go to the club,
Okay,
how to
fine,
listen
just
to
fine,
music.
and your hips and pelvis. Also, say they
Oh
already
yeah,
know how
all that.
they already know how to decolonize their hips, so they must have had a good old time.
Oh, they did. They definitely did. And Raul just goes around the world and does battles and wins them. I think he just won a giant like gold belt in Vancouver last week, like right after teaching us. Like yesterday on Instagram, I saw that. He's badass. You have to meet Raul next time you're in town.
I cannot wait to meet Raul. I want to see. I
Yeah,
want to see him
he's
battle.
badass. He's badass. Yeah, and I also want more contemporary feelings in training, right? Because we always feel like we're worshiping these masters who are three
The
generations
Europeans.
detached, and usually European. But even when they're not, they feel detached, right? Even in Hong Kong, they kind of had some like Chinese masters too. But I'm like, what the hell does that have to do with me? So I also want a contemporary vibe, but he's the OG to bring house dance to Canada, actually. So we find these like young, noisy, interesting people who have a voice, but are also steeped in the practice still, to start this movement together. And we did scene study, and we just go deep because their bodies are open, their instruments are available, they know how to scream because they screamed and cried and made orgasmic sounds with Budi already, so they're not scared of those. And then these 2 days, I really wanted for them to get to industry standards or industry best practices, at least have the vocabulary to protect themselves as they go back to the Asian world, where intimacy is not really in the curriculum yet, because it's a fairly new, right? It really came to be the last 4 years or so. I may be inaccurate on that, but around so. Yeah. So Siobhan Richardson was actually one of the original group of 3 that started Intimacy Directors International, I want to say. And she's the Canadian person. And she's kind of amazing. So they had 2 full days with her. And then we have me for 3 more days. And these 3 days, we kind of take monologue text, scene text, and everything, but we actually look at transformation. It's what Budi calls embodiment. But for me, it's 3 steps. Full embodiment and full freedom first, right? Like you can really inhabit this scale without apologies. You tap into your will body, all that good stuff we did in week 1. And then embodiment of text and dramatic action also, right? Because at some point that container does need some structure. So that's why we did script analysis, and then we did a scene study. But my scene study is almost like amorphous because I work on whatever the actors need. So sometimes it's just okay, resetting circumstances. Sometimes it's dealing with physical habits that are blocks that they can't tap into their will,
Bespoke
and
learning.
I do what. So this is how I work, which is why it can take a long time. Because sometimes I had an actor whose name I won't reveal, was unable to dream up a visceral objective. I also don't use the word objective. I think it's very colonial. I've never successfully had actors use that word successfully and set something that's like visceral and useful for them.
Come on,
that's
Eugene Ma.
flexible.
Come on now.
So I'm like,
Adam knows how I feel about objectives.
Yeah, because like I don't even like to do substitution, but sometimes if they really can't get to something that can juice them up, like, okay, fine, just like, find something that you kind of want. Maybe just end of class, like something yummy or something, just tell me something. Unable to do that. And I thought it was a circumstance setting problem. And then as I kind of asked more, I'm like, why is this a brick wall? Just like, say you want a steak, something like kind of simple. And then all objects were kind of nostalgic objects that are unattainable. And then I found out the inability to set up an objective. That was a profound lesson for me, actually. Had to do with a grief of 15 years that was not solved. So everything's about a way out. So all objectives in this person's mind was about a way out. So if it's not bespoke, if I'm in a university environment, I have hour and a half to do this. I spent 2 hours with that student, and the rest just went on to the next activity, and then we continued the work. And whoever wanted to witness also could, but if you want to watch the movie, because we also had many industry guests speak to us, they had to watch the movie so they could ask intelligible and intelligent questions when they meet those people. So yeah, we spent 2 hours, and then he let it out. We reckoned what the block was, and sometimes it's very somatic like that. And so we had that, and then the next
What I love about it
morning.
is, and we have to remind people that it's not therapy. It's things that happen can be quite therapeutic, but it's not therapy.
Right.
What you were doing is essentially just figuring out what turns on this particular artist's body and what is blocking and what is getting in the way. You weren't going into
Yeah.
like the psychology of like, okay, so let's talk
No,
about
not
why.
interested.
It's trying to fix
No.
any of that shit. Just like we want
Yeah.
to figure out why you can't like enjoy the taste of a steak.
Right. Um, my language around it nowadays, that I kind of have also asked the same questions as you have. The difference is, if what's blocking you from what we want to accomplish in the work is
Mhm.
something that needs to dealt with therapeutically, and it's not something that's like way out of our comfort range, or my comfort range to deal with,
Or
we'll
abilities, yeah.
entertain a little bit, right? And then we'll see what that detour goes to, because sending them back out into the world without closure, and them having
Hmm.
opened that door, I
Come
think
on
it's
now,
the
Eugene. Now you
most
speak.
dangerous, most irresponsible thing to do as an acting teacher, and I
And
cannot
that's
let
what they
that
all did
happen.
to us in the at those places in at NYU.
Yeah, they get you raw, but they don't stitch you back, right? Because that generation, I don't know your generation, but even my generation,
It's true. It's
which
true.
was a
It's true.
decade ago, um, we were praised for being open and raw, but I was already
Yeah.
like open and raw to
Yeah.
begin with. I was a ball
Yeah.
of impulse, right?
Yeah.
Freshman year, they told me to find containers for my impulse already, when all these kids are trying to feel things. It was strange. So,
They go in
but
and move the
yes.
furniture and don't and leave.
Yeah, so sometimes I question the frame of a university when I can't even know if they have a learning disability. I just get extended test
Yeah.
times. And that's insane. Also, they don't, oh,
That is
sorry, that may
insane.
not be PC, but that's not the language I can use in
Girl, you know this
Canada.
is not a
But
PC. This is not a PC network.
yeah. But I also, there may be Canadian contingents of populations not yet
But
working with us
okay,
listening to
wait, but wait,
this.
let's talk about this.
Right.
The reason why I agree with you talking about, well, let's not being able to know if someone has a learning disability, it's for us to support them. You
Right.
know, if it has to be this ambiguous thing or that you're not allowed to know, we're sitting here teaching to a brief that that they literally can't process, and that there's not an open dialogue where you can have a conversation with an artist about what's going on, so we can figure out what to best cater the education to them. It's not this like carte blanche of like, you know, we don't have any racism and we don't have any, and we treat everyone equally. But if we treat everyone equally, that lets white supremacy dominate the space, because the way that these people think is through a white supremacist a lens. And so that's what they're saying, we treat everyone equally through a white supremacist gaze, you know. And so it's like, without looking at the different intersections that people enter from, you'll never be able to really have a dialogue with where they need to go in their art. And ultimately, is that not what we're trying to get them to do as artists on stage, is to be able to interact and communicate through themselves to another?
Yeah, and moreover, right, having them speak out, and I almost demand it, in this kinds of space, because it's just responsible to do. And also, as someone who will work in workplaces that are not just, you do have the responsibility for yourself and for the set to know your boundaries and know things, and this is the safe space to figure it out. But moreover, them not disclosing almost strengthens the stigma, right? Because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with Brene Brown, we know that guilt and shame come from festering, not spoken of things, and then the students also go away and multiply that. right? That's how it grows. It's like germs, and it's not responsible, one. And two, they also don't know what curriculum they're inviting into these programs, because most of them are trying to save monies, and it's the adjunctification of these programs. And they get me for clown, right? And they just assume it's the red notes and they have fun and they laugh a little bit. No, it's the scariest class in most grad schools, and the most rigorous ones at that. And I do the full-on version, because otherwise, why do it at all if I'm not, asking for this kind of deep, visceral openness, that will send us to feel things that we never felt before. But that's why I chase the work as an actor. Of course, if I see you going off the rails and you are no longer in the driver's seat, I will stop you. But if you're making fun and commenting on the exercise and also killing the buzz for the room, we can't liberate together, then I see that as a very violent act, actually. So I tend to give you the appropriate response, which is like, no, let's figure it out, right? I sit them down and have a conversation, usually. That's what happens. So curriculum builders need to do their homework and know viscerally what they're building, because a lot of these folks are not really in actor training, and it's a different curriculum building structure as other disciplines, even designers, even directors, because actors in training are so fucking vulnerable to me, because they don't know the standard of excellence. They learn by example. They learn by the feedback, the feedback loop we provide, and what we sometimes bypass. They are deeply aware of that. What we're careful of, they are deeply aware of that, and what we deal with, they're deeply aware of that. And in institutions, I don't have the freedom to do that, because sometimes they say I'm like the strict one or something. I'm like, no, I just deal with things, but I'm actually like the chillest person. Like, just ask me for coffee or something. Like, I'm so chill about the thing, but I respect the work in the moment. And also that boundary is to protect your safety, because what we do is pretty out there. We go far into deep vulnerability. And chances are at college age, you haven't done that in many other rooms. So for someone to violently crash into that, I will scream. I have to, for the safety of y'all, boundaries, right? It's never an insult or anything. It's not the last generation of gurus. I'm not interested in that. But then I may smell like that, because I hold very firm boundaries sometimes when we're heated in the work.
Yeah, but you're generous. Generosity is not nicety. There's a difference between being generous and being nice.
Yeah.
You're generous. But within that generosity, there is boundary and a framework.
Yeah. And generosity is also kindness, and kindness is not nice. 100%. Also, same.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
So it's really hard to do this work in institutions, because you don't know what the rest of the faculty is pushing sometimes. And at most places like Yale, when Chris has a certain reputation, that people are looking forward to that does something in that culture that supports it. And you also had Ron, right, whose scene study really feeds off of Chris's ideas. Which is why when I was at Columbia and Ron was there, Ron was the person who's responsible for my almost rise, right? I got to teach at grad school the second semester of teaching in my career, with no MFA as a 20-something-year-old. That's pretty bizarre. Whose first language was not even English. But I had a nightmarish first semester at another school that was, and then I thought I was a terrible teacher. And then I came to a system that supports and lauds that kind of openness in the scene work, that doesn't try to fight back, right? Because we're asking the actors to do a lot. And I was also figuring out, right? I didn't understand about closure, because Chris taught mainly in an environment that also has that kind of work in maybe the Alexander room, right? Some other tutorials can give them closure, but when I teach out of that context and a common understanding of the rigor of this kind of actor work, like bleh, really sinking into the scary, because I also like to tell actors nowadays, being an actor is completely unnatural. There's what we do is really screwed up. People go through grief, changes of careers, major family changes, hopefully in a not super tragic life, maybe 8-10 times a lifetime, or like 10, 12, 15, 20, let's say, not 8 times a week. but we do that 8 times a week. That's not cool. And also certain private things were private for a reason, to protect ourselves. So what we ask you to do is deeply artificial and fucked up. We need to understand that. And it's not a comment on your talent, but do you have the appetite to actually do that thing?
Yeah.
That Viola Davis, Meryl Streep, whatever, whomever the great appetites, the great animals of our lifetimes that we worship, that's what we strive for in actor training and looking at acting as a career, because there are also viable careers that you learn a couple tricks and you want to be a personality. Then maybe you don't want to look at deep actor training, because I don't think your interest aligns with what we offer. But at the same time, if you love that thrill, we need more of those people.
Yeah, 100%.
Always.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Before we finish with what you're doing this summer, can you give us the list of guests that came to chat with your students?
Yeah. So let me finish with the final week. So after transformation, they work with Jasmine, who is a Netflix co-producer, co-creator of Fakes on Netflix. Will be working with the actors to integrate all these works onto the camera. And also we'll have a directing track, teaching film directors how to direct actors.
Cool.
So we'll kind of have this, we'll have our actors work with directors who don't yet know how to communicate with them, as both
fabulous.
sides figure out. So that common language, I think, is much needed in our world. But our special guests are many and amazing. We had Mamadou Achai, who just did Elementals as the blob of water, the great lead, and also saved everyone in Jurassic World. We had Fala Chen from Irma Vep on HBO, and also Shang-Chi, who played Shang-Chi's mother with Tony Leung. We had Marie Cristina Oliveras, who is currently starring in Rachel Chafkin's Hades Town in Toronto as Persephone, as the matriarch of the world, and also I think the spirit center of the show. Humans coming up, we also have Johnny Woo, a dear friend who's currently in Joyride the movie. Tremel Tillman, who is now on, who has been on Severance, the TV show, and also Christopher Tramontana, who went to grad school with Tremel, a dear clown colleague and dear friend of mine. So they're gonna have that double relationship of colleague, but also coming from the same training. How do they use it very differently? And who else do we have?
Anyone from the David Geffen School of Drama?
Mamadou went to Geffen. Did I miss anyone? I also Anya Banerjee. Oh, our dear friend Walton, because I'm thinking in Actorland. Duh, there are so many. How can I keep track? I'm also teaching 8 hours a day. Okay, yeah. So, but also Anya Banerjee from Columbia, from my teaching years already working on the Blacklist series regular on the final season. I shouldn't talk about that while they're on. The things the unions are on, but that's happening. So and then also Walton Wilson, our dear friend Walton Wilson, our master voice teacher, and the former head of acting at the Geffen School of McGeffen.
It was Yale School of Drama when he was the head. When he stepped down, it
yeah.
became
That is true.
His leaving made it David Geffen. Yeah, he left it, and then David Geffen took over. He said, I found my way in."
He didn't leave. He left the post.
He left the
But
post.
he's still at
there.
the
Of course,
school. He's
100%.
very much
he's still there.
yeah.
He's very much still there.
Yeah, so that's these 5 weeks, and it's kind of, I'm in bliss. I'm tired physically, but mentally I'm not at all tired, and it's pretty it's one of the more life affirming things I've ever done. And
I mean, you're glowing, girl. You are glowing. When you got on the call, I was like, "Girl, did you lose 20 pounds?" Damn,
no, we just bought an LED light. Sorry.
It's all about the lighting, honey. It's all about
my
the
glow
lighting.
is $60.
That's a $60 glow. Woo! Talk about a facelift, honey.
But speaking of glowing in the face, we read a play. We also do Monday play readings at the Atelier. And last night we read my dear collaborator, Cherry Lou Tsai's new adaptation that I kind of conceived with her a little bit, that lampoons Turandot, which is a deeply confused layer. Turandot, the opera, is a deeply confused layers of cultural appropriation. That's kind of a random matching of cultures. So we're just further bastardizing it. But in it, speaking of facial glows, will I give away the play? But she calls something Madison Square Gardens, and think of like Asian associations of what makes of what makes things better. That has to do with MSG.
Pearl cream made from real pearls.
Things. So yeah. Anyway, and that part can be cut. Because I'm no longer cogent. Yeah.
Okay, so what part do you want cut?
I don't know. Up to you. Whatever makes it smoother.
Okay, fabulous. Well, you know what? I think it's time for provocations. Eugene Ma has just like dropped the gauntlet. Ooh, Lord. How's that sound, boys? Shall we take a little break and come back for provocations?
Great. Let's do it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen and non-binary conforming individuals, you're listening to the stereo sounds of J. D. B. So now we're back to provocations, boys. We're back off a break and back to provocations. So Adam, can you let Eugene know what we mean by provocation?
Yeah, provoke, poke, prod, make our guests, our audience do something. Make them think hard about something, read something, see something, do something. They're waited or bated breath. They want to come train with you, but they have to wait a whole other year. So what should they do in the meantime?
Before they wait for a whole year, they can also show up to our fall programs.
Okay, well then there you go.
Can you tell us about the fall programs?
Yes, we can.
Okay, start with those first, and then we'll go into provocations.
Fantastic. So I call a class Acting 101, which we will use monologue as a vehicle because I want a sustained, full, uninterrupted arc of you going through, a dramatic action with a moment of change. That is not geared toward just the stage, and that will run. From my training background, of course, clown is at the base of it all, so we'll likely have one round of clown intensive. We'll also begin scene studies for the working and trained actor, so you're not coming in and figuring out the first things about objectives and, all those things. So assuming you know what those are and you have a practice, then you come in and we just work on scenes the way I've described in our program. That's the third thing. The fourth thing, we'll also have a BFA, MFA prep program. So you can pick and choose if you want help on your application also. We also have some kind of coaching courses that has small group things and also one-on-one moments leading up to mock auditions with folks who have been around those institutions that you may be interested in. And finally, we are also trying to pioneer more. So today, as I spoke with intimacy coordinator Siobhan Richardson, we really want to go further with intimacy work. So it's not just about boundaries and getting afraid and saying, no, I can't go deep, but rather because you have the boundaries, you can start to raise it on your own pace and also play with how in context of a scene it works. So we are probably going to pioneer a course called Intimacy Scene Study, where we try to raise acting and how we deeply connect while you have the technical tools to support it.
Love it.
So these are the fall offerings at the Performance Atelier at performanceatelier.ca.
And it's in Toronto, not Toledo.
Yeah.
In Toronto, which is only 70 to 80 minutes away from New York City and much cheaper in tuition. Think about it. You get a free trip
flight
and the same tuition, and you get a retreat.
And a beautiful city with some amazing food.
Yeah, Toronto's amazing, y'all. I just fell in love with it. I got so spoiled that when I got back to the States and I was like trying to order food, I kind of went anorexic a little bit because I was like, I don't want to eat anything because it's not matching all the delicious food that Eugene was taking me to have every single day. Yeah.
So, but I'm a little jealous. My body needs that purge.
Oh my God, that makes me think that Adam, do you remember when I got my appendix taken out and I was like so skinny when I came back from the hospital, and the fashion bitches were like, "Oh my God, you look amazing," and I was like, I've been in the hospital for a week because I almost died because I got my appendix taken out. They're like, whatever it was, girl, you look amazing. Keep it up. Tapeworm, where can I get to? Love it.
Yeah, that's what I want for next Christmas. Oh no.
I wonder if they'll let me in the country if I have a tapeworm. That's like do I have to like put that on my like customs for Australia?
Do not disclose, but do it.
You'll be too weak to walk up to that gate anyway, so it won't matter.
Oi. Depends on where you store it. Okay. Provocation
time.
So today I want to speak to young actors or the emerging actors who are joining our family, our troupe in this craft. My provocation is for you to be less reverent of whatever good acting and good training is, because everything is contextual. So start asking so many questions about everything, and feel free to ask questions of your teachers and with your classmates. But I also have a big caveat with it, that you want to be irreverent without dismissing what came before us, because we are building on a tradition, and that lineage thing actually does something quite beautiful. And but we want to identify the core of what made it burn and what works for us and keep going with it. Otherwise, we will be stepping on clouds and step through it. So be curious, but really question your training and question what they're saying, but ask productive questions. Just be curious and get your teachers out for coffee.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
I don't think they've realized how much we actually really do want to talk to them and want them to be better. And like, nobody asks us out for coffee. Nobody takes anybody up on that thing. It's just like, I would absolutely love someone who was passionate about this craft and really wanted to dedicate themselves to it. I would give you all my time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we are nerds who like to talk about this for 9 hours a day. I mean, that's my
Hello.
teaching schedule sometimes. Right?
185 podcasts. I mean, come
take us up
on.
on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to you two, especially.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
preaching to the choir, and that's why we like want them to send us like responses to the provocations, send us questions. Like
Absolutely.
like people go, "Oh, I love listening to your podcast." I said, "Why aren't you sending us questions? We will
Yeah.
answer your questions. What do you want to know? That's what we're
Yeah.
here for. We're here to actually help you know more."
Yeah.
And if we
Yeah.
don't know, we'll bring on experts like Eugene Ma that can answer those questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does that mean that you'll come back, Eugene Ma? Will you come back
Let's
here
have me
sometime?
back. I got so long-winded on just the program. I have so much more to spill.
Yeah.
Yay! Yes, Winnie the Pooh is coming back, y'all. Pooh is coming back. Adam Marple, how
Yeah.
will we know that they did this?
They're going to go to speakpipe.com/theater of others. Again, speakpipe.com/theater of others, theater with an R-E, theater of others, all one word. You can leave a 90-second voice message on there. We'll play it on air and we will answer your questions or try our best to answer your questions. Or you can provoke us. You can tell us what we need to be doing, what we are missing out on, what we are not talking about. We are also on podcast, Theater of Others. You can leave an email there. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, our website,
Hologram,
and
y'all.
Threads for some
Get
reason.
threads. We thread it together.
Well, I don't know if anybody's really threading it together on there, but we're trying our best.
Does
It's
anybody
like,
go? Eugene, do you have a Threads account?
I don't.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's like
I'm
MySpace.
Threads.
bad tech
It's like
Asian here.
it's like MySpace. I mean, it's real nice, it's real gentle, but like it's all just probably not gonna win the war.
Is it MySpace? Oh my God, it's MySpace.
It's like
It's
MySpace.
your
It's-
space.
Have y'all heard? Speaking of MySpace, have y'all heard about 2027?
It is a
No?
year. I have heard of it. Yes.
That's apparently when the aliens are landing.
And what
Fully.
should they do,
Oh.
Booty? What do they need to do to find out about all these podcasts?
They need to subscribe. How you
They
gonna
do.
know if we're coming into your inbox if you don't subscribe? We do this podcast week. We can be in your inbox week. So you have to subscribe.
And we
And if
should
you really
also
like
make a
it-
show for the aliens.
Yes. We
Theater
should definitely make
for
a
others.
theater for the
For the
aliens.
others.
For theater of the UFO.
Yeah.
Unidentified flying others.
I have no more brain capacity for a completely different species. I am worried about this species and I'm worried
Oh
about this planet.
Adam, you don't have capacity for another species?
No, I'm a speciesist.
Whoa.
I'm a speciesist.
Wow.
I'm putting it out there on the podcast right now. I don't care about these aliens, these motherfucking aliens on this motherfucking planet. I don't care. They have come at the wrong time. They have come at the complete wrong time. The world is just falling apart and I can't trust anything. Go away.
But they haven't fully come yet. They're coming on the 2027.
Nah, they've seen. What are they coming for? They're looking at this place. It's trashed. It's full of a bunch of assholes. They're just gonna go right on by. They're coming. They're gonna look down. They're gonna like, nah, I'm good, and they're gonna turn right back around.
But if they like us, they can leave us 5 stars like my Uber driver does. 5 star, 5 star, 5 star, 5 star, 5 star. It's a win. It's a double sum end game, and then everybody wins.
Non-zero sum game.
What Adam said. And then, if you really like us, because you've already given us 5 stars, but you want to give us more than 5 stars, or you want to give us a comment, you can leave us a comment. It opens up our algorithms, and then it thinks it goes into this pot. It goes, and we go from being the top 5% podcast of the world to the number 1 podcast in the universe.
That's right.
Because we are not speciesists. We accept the unidentified others to this podcast. If any aliens out there are listening, we will be happy to have a conversation about theater and your opinions about American theater. The world theater. The theater on this planet. Eugene, you're magic. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Oh my God. What did I say? I have no idea what I said.
You said it all, girl. You said it all. You said it all.
It was all great. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. And we wish you so much luck in Toronto, not Toledo, at the Performance Atelier. And please give the students my love. Tell them I miss them.
I will.
And that I will respond. I owe them some responses. They're coming. My jet lag is over. I have no more excuses. Tell them to keep an eye out on the app because I'll be sending them some responses.
Great.
And Adam, thank you for coming on this podcast. So good to see you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so glad to have been invited to the podcast today. Thank you.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
I love you, Eugene. I love you. I love you so much.
Thank you.
And for y'all, we'll be back next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Theater Brothers podcast. Make sure to visit our website, theaterbrothers.org, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. A special thank you to Purple Planet for the music you've heard. The Theater Brothers creates a shared community of artists and audiences for the purposes of exploring the most profound issues of our lives and times. We believe the play watches the audience. The audience is necessary, and they are witness to what happens. And you get to be witness to us making that happen. The purpose of this podcast is to open up our process and let you in. We're peeling back the curtain, so to speak, and encouraging you to follow along, to ponder, prod, and question, to join us and criticize us if need be. Being a witness is no passive task and requires much from you. Are you up for the journey? Be sure to tune in next week for our next journey.